Welcome everyone in the audience to the 4th episode of Diablo Insights. I am Ava, and I'm joined today by Saura, NOAA, and Bob, or InsneBob. Why don't you guys introduce yourself in that order?
Well, I'll go first. LordxSaura, as I mentioned, I have been mainly playing PvP since Season 0. Started the right at launch. And initially, as we all know, PvE endgame wasn't fully there. So find a challenge in PvP. I always try doing YouTube guides and get some creativity going. So wanted to make PvP builds. I looked for PvP builds first, couldn't find any, so I said, oh, maybe there's a room here, maybe I can add something different. So start doing that. And I recently joined GMS actually, just to help out some more PV side of things, as well as maybe potentially PvP side of things.
It's my turn, right?
Yeah. No, Noah, go on.
All right. Hey everyone, I'm NOAO. I'm a bit of a seasoned PvPer in Diablo 4 since at least the beta, Season 0 especially. I specialize in playing the Barbarian class, focusing on crafting and optimizing mostly PvP builds. PvE is not my piece of cake, let's say it like that. So whether you're looking for advice in PvP or need help fine-tuning Barbarian builds, especially for PvP, I'm usually able to help. What else? I joined the GMS community, I think it was last year, alongside Ava and the others. And we've been doing a lot of good testing and gameplay testing together since we basically hang up. So yeah, that's it.
And finally, we have Bob.
All right. What's going on? Hi, everyone. My name is InsneBob. It's NOAO, or Bob. I main a Druid. I was part of the Bulwark Boys in Sanctuary, where Big Ace, Big Dave, Boiler, and myself, along with a bunch of other amazing people, shout out to the Bulwark Boys, started designing builds or playing with the Bulwark build that Ace released, min-maxing it and improving it continually. As soon as, like Sora said, as soon as I got to a decent set of gear, PvE wasn't a challenge. The hardest part was Lilith, and that was a joke for anybody that played Bulwark. You know exactly what I mean. We can just tank everything, or we could. Currently in Clan Valor with Sora and NOAA. Me and Sora are both officers. I've participated in FNF PvP tournaments hosted by Reef as a Druid in Season 1 and 2. While I lost 99% of my games, I was able to manage a win against Dang Zero. Shout out Costco. BB is going to love that. Sorry, Dang Zero, I love you. I'm sorry. And then also shout out to Reef. We appreciate you. Thank you for everything you've done.
Yep.
And continue to do. Lately, we've been working on 2 exciting projects. Let me reread this before I start talking. I'm like, wait a minute, what can we delete, remove? Okay. We've been working on 2 exciting projects. First, organizing PvP tournaments. We just finished our 3rd tournament. It's 2 hours ago-ish, which was awesome. We had a great tournament with a bunch of people. Amazing guys. Your community is amazing. I love you. And then the second is working on GMS. I started GMS in Season 2. I sent Ava a spreadsheet, and I was like, hey, this is where I'm going to start compiling everything I know. And I don't know what you're doing, but this is where I'm at, and I need to start compiling it because this is too much stuff. And then we started talking about GMS. And I, for the most part, a lot of my tests have been PvP related from Season 1 going forward, and we'll talk more about reasons why. But I'm thrilled to be here to share my experience with you guys.
Welcome, all of you. For those
Sorry.
who don't know in the PvP community, because I'm not there 99% of the time, like I said, I'm Ava or Averlin. I'm a article writer for Maxroll that focuses on the technical aspects of the game, such as damage calculations, attack speed breakpoints, lucky hit, etc. There has been some overlap in what I do with PvP. If you have been a rogue since season 0, you have seen my Poison Imbuing Bible, which set the well, a lot of interactions going for like a lot of the rats out there. Shout out to those boys as well, because those boys were a very lovely community to be in back when I just got it started, and I'm still interacting with them even now. So Rat Clan, always in my heart kind of thing. The reason why GMS is involved a little bit with PvP right now in terms of talking about it and having a podcast episode about it is because of something I suppose we can announce now. We are creating a testing branch for PvP where we're going to be focusing on properly investigating how the PvP works to try and help cataloging some of the issues in PvP in terms of like how does DR actually work, how is damage actually calculated, etc. We're not doing this to sort of, be annoying to you guys in any sort of capacity. We are just trying to make sure that the game is working like it should, and therefore making you guys have more room to come up with very interesting builds. This is not in any capacity supposed to be a detriment to you guys. It's supposed to essentially just help you guys. And in that effort, we will have Saura, or LordxSaura, and InsneBob leading it. They will be the two people that are running the GMS PvP side. And we are hoping that people that are interested in testing in the future will reach out to myself, Bob, or Saura, and basically be like, hey, I want to get in on that, and help, investigating stuff. We will talk more about the testing part of GMS and what we have uncovered, because Bob and I spent too many hours testing damage and how it works in PvP. And it's something that I don't think the community fully understands. So stay tuned for that. We'll talk about it towards the end. For now, we're gonna have like a sort of brief overview of how PvP looks like right now, and we're going to talk about how it has been historically, how the PvP system works, and all that sort of stuff to just get a broad picture of PvP overall. And these guys will most likely do most of the talking, and I will do a little bit of guidance here and there because I am not experienced in PvP. So the first question. You guys are playing 3 different classes. You're playing Necromancer, Barbarian, and Druid. How do they feel to play in PvP?
I guess I'll go.
I mean, who wants to start?
I'll start. Yeah.
Go for it.
Necro feels good. With the set of rules we did in the community to we called it good mannered rules, like immortal builds are not a thing, like 100 dot chance is not a thing, or perma flame shield is not a thing, or like 25 martial vigor is not a thing. Necro feels quite decent. The turning point for Necro was season 2. Before then, there's so much CC in the game, especially in PvP, lucky hits and especially dots and everything. You're CC'd like every other second, or maybe like if not every 2 seconds. So Necro had only Blood Mist as a access to unstoppable. So before Metamorphosis came to game, Necro was very, very rough in PvP. In fact, I tried to make it work so long for season 0 and season 1. Season 0 was actually quite decent with minions proccing Decrypify and Thorns interaction, I found. So I was in Mist all the time, and I was getting my minions do the work for me. But then the power creep kind of happened. The damage got higher in the season 1, and then minions also are nerfed in PvP zone, so they were getting wrecked. And I found a different build, which was Shadow Wave, Shadow Surfer in the PvE. I think Microbio did a guide on it as well. So that worked really well. But the challenge was, you didn't have access to Unstoppable. Season 2 came by and we got Metamorphosis. Things got really good. Majority of the fights were quite even, except Ball of Lightning Sorks. Certain Sorks, especially Cody, Bui,
was
some guys in
overtuned,
the
yeah.
community. Yeah, community in the they found a way to do so much damage, and I mean it was bugged that we found out later. at least at the time later. And then it could also be very tanky. So it kind of like swept the season. And we had some buggy interactions. The Selig was bugged in PvP for a while, which made like Barb's quite immortal. So, and those kind of things actually, whatever actually was bugged in PvE eventually impacted PvP even more significantly. So there's a common ground there. But yeah, the class feels good in season 4 with the mannered rules. But if I go see a 25 martial vigor rank barb, then I have to go swap to my minion build, and then they can swap to 100% dodge, and it's really easy to abuse these like cheesy mechanics, and things can get out of control.
All right. What about the two of you then? How does it feel to play Barbarian and Druid? I guess we can start with Barbarian.
I mean, Barbarian, it's pretty much an omni class, let's say like that. You can play a lot of builds on it, I would say. Since like season 0, we had this build with the Quake on the Hammer of the Ancients. It was bugged. It was fun to play. Season 1 came up. We had rogues with a lot of damage. We had to switch to double swing for not for like damage, honestly, but it was more like health regen. Season 2, we started to play bit of thorns, and it was kind of nasty. I mean, Barb overall has a good kit when it comes to high burst damage, survivability. You also have a large pool of HP. You can basically generate a lot of HP from your Paragon, from your skill tree. It scales pretty well with pretty much everything. Also because it has the arsenal system, right? Arsenal system, you have 4 weapons. Those 4 weapons give you those 4 attack aspects, so they are always active actually. So it's a big plus on Barbarian. Overall in PvP, for example, this season for me it was pretty balanced. Especially the Sork and Barbarian balance, also the Necro was pretty much a good balance. But yeah, when it comes to free for all though, the new player experience is pretty much horrible. You don't really see like new players coming into PvP. You basically see most of the time, right? You see old veteran players playing it. Basically the junkie, right? The the junkie that still have the adrenaline rush when they do PvP. It's pretty much dead since season 0, since we first step into the PvP map. It's also hard to keep a balance in. Yeah.
One thing to add there is actually the reason Free for All is struggling is the bugs. Like season 1, we had the stun hard bug, which you would get stun all the time. Like if there was a Sork with Hydras, Bar with bleed, or like Torns, you would just be stunned all the time. That was your gameplay experience. And then we also had the Barber Heart, where they could proc the Barber with the mobs, and that they would ignore the PvP DR, so you would get like just blown up super quickly. Season 2, I think we were good. It was actually best free for all experience until the Tears of Blood introduced, and then people came to the layer with 100 level Tears of Blood, which was not gated any sort. Like there was no cap in PvP, so everyone was like one shotting each other. And season 3, we had pets, which had initially the Tempest bug. If someone was running Tempest, you would kill person, then your own pet would kill you. And then that was fixed half season, but it was just pet mechanics were just not really great. Maybe I'm forgetting bug there as well, but season 4
pets were not that good. Yeah.
Season 4 could be great, but then we had people that wanted to troll with 25 martial vigor with being immortal, and then perma flame shield sorks.
Yeah, martial vigor on Barbarian is a passive, right, on a skill tree. So it basically gives flat DR. And they forgot how to do the math. apparently. Okay, so in PvP you have 90% DR on when you enter the PvP map, you have 90% DR. That's basically different from the PvE part, since nobody wants to get hit for like hundreds of millions, right? So there is a 90% DR on it. But let's say you stack another 100 plus, right? You basically become immortal by stacking just martial vigor passive.
Yeah, it's because the
Same
ER on
for
it
the
is
flame
additive.
duration.
Yeah, it's additive.
Same like logic is on the flame shield duration. So you get enough flame shield duration and cooldown that you're basically perma in flame shield.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
It's the same bug bug interaction, whatever that is in PvE as well right now.
Yeah.
But overall, it wasn't too far from being an enjoyable experience if these things
Yeah.
were not
Mhm.
like all season long were permanently in the game and you couldn't do anything about it.
For druids, I'll go now, I guess. For druids, I would say season 1 felt good. I was newbie, not knowing where how to get our damage up, and Ace of Spades. I'll give him credit because he did. He pointed me in the direction of Rune Worker and aspects. The Rune Worker aspect significantly increased our damage. That's where all of our damage came from in those seasons. Without that, I actually have a video somewhere on my YouTube where I had 4 guys trying to kill me, but I was a barbarian, or I was a bulwark boy. Man, you couldn't kill me unless you had like a decent build. Like the actual like PvPers in the Field of Hatred. It was beautiful. I loved it. I had such a great time until I met Saul, and then I couldn't kill him, but he couldn't kill me. And then I met Dust, and I cried. Dust, like really good barbarians were just like stupid. It was so unbelievable. Sorks
Was it a
felt
Quake?
good to fight against. No, he was either double. I don't remember, but I think he was double swing. But
Oh, the double swing vulnerable.
yeah,
After
and
the vulnerable
vulnerable.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Vulnerable really affects barriers, or it did really affect barriers. We, not going to speak on it yet until we test and verify everything again. I learned from my mistake. I'm not going to be narrow-minded about it. But I had a really good time fighting Necros. I never got a chance to fight Saura. I had a really good time fighting Sorks. I fought I fought a lot of Sorks. I actually joined Rat Clan first before joining Valor. So I'm, once a rat, always a rat.
We never leave.
In like fighting, we don't. Fighting with like Tinkerbell made me feel like I could beat Tinkerbell, and that made me feel a little bit confident. I could beat Curry, that made me feel pretty confident. But then you get a rogue that just pricks you once and you die, or a barb, and you just sit there for 5 minutes until he finally gets you and you die. In season 2, it's funny you talk about Barber Heart, man. In season 2, as a druid, we got that pull heart. I know you all remember that pull heart. Oh man, whew. Give me that pull heart. Let my explosion hit, my bulwark go off, and kill everything. Don't mess with me, dude. Let's do it. Let's go. Oh, it's so good. And then we do dueling, and it wasn't so good.
Pulled you
Fighting
across the map.
1v1. Yeah, pull you from
You could be extracting on top, and it could pull you all the way to the bottom.
In the mobs too, and it's like as soon as you pop your barrier or you cast bulwark again, everybody dies, and you sit there like, yeah, I did that. It felt great.
So how does it feel right
You had
now then?
the claw, right?
So I don't really PvP much right now. I've spent most of my time, like I just came back. I want to say I spent a week playing before we started hosting. So like I have a level 100 with like terrible gear. Aries let me know that real quick. We dueled. He just knocked me out, and I was like, "That's cool. I ain't mad at it." But because of the tournaments, I'm able to watch people play. I don't mean to be long-winded. I'm sorry. But seeing druids, seeing the different
Thanks for the
classes,
raid,
watching
dude.
the amateur league that we had
Thanks, man.
last week, it was beautiful. It was nice to see necromancer show up and hold their own. Honestly, the weakest class, or the class I thought was the weakest, rogues. Rogues came in 4th, I think, in the tournament. We had Janos, just like an amazing delivery in his fights against really strong, really good barbarians, as well as Sworks. So we saw everybody in the top in the semifinals. We saw Druid, we saw Sork, Necro, Barb, Rogue. It was beautiful. I think it's like Saura said, it's as balanced as it's ever been, and that's in a large part due to Saura and the rest of the Combat Collective with the GM rules.
Shout out to Reef on that.
So I suppose
Shout out to Reef. And
I suppose that when we're talking about the state of PvP as well, like a large part of that is going to be about these rules, right? So for people that aren't involved in PvP like myself, could you briefly explain like how the rules work? Like how are they decided?
Yeah, so I was assigned as combat collective leader because no one else wanted the role, because it's the
Get
role
all
you
the
don't want
hate,
to be
yeah.
in. Yeah, because I'm
You nerf
I'm
my
the one
class.
who nerfed their broken builds. But the what I did actually was we initially had two from each class. Two barb, two sword each class, and I wanted to push the conversation. Like if I see something in the fields, if I see certain mechanics, so martial vigor came beginning of the season. We knew that we lost tons of DR from the gear, so we brought up the idea of how do we tune down the Sork's damage, because if there's no DR, Sork's gonna just, which is kind of the case right now. Sorks are really dominant, but I brought up those ideas as a CC leader, whatever, and then each of the class we went to testing and we said, okay, take this off, take this, try this, try that, limit this, and then I wanted to leave the last decision to the barb, like so they would vote within each other. The barb players, they would decide on the barb nerf. So like I didn't want to be the one, hey, as a necromancer, because I might have a bias as a necro, say, hey, reduce martial vigor ranks, but maybe that is not the most fair way. So my idea was to let each of the class persons to decide how to adjust their own class. But sadly, as the season progressed, participation was low. Like, as we were in week 2, it was a little hard for people to get the gear, to test everything possible. So we did our best we could at the time, but that's pretty much how it was done. Get into testing early on, test those mechanics, and then propose those rules, and they would each class would vote for their own rulemaking. And then we ended up with martial vigor ranks limited to 9. Sorks cannot run engulfing versus necros, druids, and rogues, and then they can only put 1 point into firewall versus barbs. So we came up with some rules like that, and one of the main things that we did was reducing the immortal builds. Like permanent flame shield. How do we reduce that? So try to kept it as healthy as possible. If we had more participation, I think we would have been a lot more successful at it. But for now, we did the best we could, I think.
How would you feel like if we separate the conversation about like all the bugs and stuff, do you feel like the classes are relatively balanced? Like if we're excluding stuff like, the immortal builds and all that sort of stuff, like how does classes feel? Like do they feel relatively balanced?
It's hard to say relatively balanced because the meta also shifts like every 2 weeks. So like people can find a different build, bring it into PvP, and then it can change the whole outgoing matches. Everything you can change, but it's hard to say everything is balanced. But I think it's balanced as it has ever been in season 4. Like season 1, druids and necros were not even in the picture. It was just 3 classes. Now we actually get 4 out of 5 classes. Rogues were really struggling, but outside of that, it was with the rules it kind of worked. But without the rules, it's Barb's world. We were living in it. Like if there were no rules, I don't think any other class could touch the Barb. And right now, actually, there are tournaments for just Barb versus Barb. There's a kind of small community there. They just deal with each other. I go to a layer, there's 13 other Barbs, and I'm going, yep, I'm out. I'll see you guys later. They're on another level.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Sorry, I completely agree. It's as balanced as it's ever been, for sure, hands down.
If it's community ruled, right?
Just
Yeah,
like
community.
yeah, I suppose. If it wasn't, and you exclude all the very like obviously broken stuff, NOAA, what do you think then? Do you think cluster is still relatively balanced, or?
Nah, they're not. If as a new player you just build up your PvP build, or you look up for like some PvP builds, you go into your layer and you don't know about those 14 rules, like 5 rules for class, no, you're gonna get bodied like pretty hard. Like the average player experience when it comes to PvP, it's pretty much horrible. And you can see it, like it's not like season 0 layer activity or season 1 is basically dead.
It's a ghost
It's
town.
dead content. Yeah.
Beginning of season was every beginning of season it gets activity, but what happens is that if a new player wants to get into PvP and they get experience the stun heart bug, or they get experience martial vigor or perma flame shield sword, how that player is gonna come back to PvP is like, whoa, this is like BS. I'm not gonna come back to this zone again. I'll just get my seeds and seasonal achievement and never come back.
Can I?
So when you experience those things, I think it makes it tough for new players to get into. And maybe there's also not enough guys. Like you can come into PvP zone doing, with your PvE build, doing tons of damage. You come to PvP zone, you tickle people, and that's also not a good feeling.
Yep. And to go off of that, just with trying to promote and the comments that I see when I do promote our PvP tournaments is why so you can play an immortal build, or you can fight an immortal build, or Barb's winning another one, or Sork's flame shield, or like there's so many just like negative comments because that's the way they view it. They don't know that there are rules, even with stating hey, look, there are rules to this, and here's like a list. It's still like they see tournament, they see PvP, and they're like, nah, thanks, fam.
I suppose that one
With
of the
that
big.
being said,
So go on, sorry.
With that being said, we did a amateur like entry level tournament, and we had over 30 people signed up within a week, and which tells me that there's even I have a YouTube channel and I get quite a traction on my YouTubes, and I get good amount of views and a lot of questions. People come to my Discord and ask PvP questions. There is definitely a good amount of interest, but the information is not as accessible. And then, like I said, you run into those things, and there's just I think there's a base there's a fundamental crowd that wants to get into it, but there are a few reasons that just stops them, because I think that entry level tournament shows when you provide people an environment that is fairly like relatively more balanced, not as broken things, and people can come out and have fun.
Yeah, to go off of that, I don't mean to keep this going, but to go off that, you're absolutely the builds that we produce for like the Valor clan, we made builds and publicly and publicized them so that people can see these builds, and it's like a starter build. 2 of the starter builds were made it did really well in the tournament. I think one of them got into the semifinals, and it was just a starter build that we made that's like, here's a start point, go from there, and this is where you want to start. So I know, like I said earlier, with as a druid, I got a video where I'm not doing any damage to 4 dudes sitting around me punching me in the face because I didn't know where to start with the damage. So that's like a place that you guys can go, and it's all in the PvP channel here on Sanctuary.
That's
Is
cool.
the wind shear build?
Yeah, Windshear build did really well. Not quite as well as Rubio's build, though. I see you down there, Rubio. You're beautiful.
Damn, shut up.
I think one of the questions I'm thinking about when I hear all of this is like, what PvP systems would be sort of required for PvP to feel engaging right now? Because it feels like the not only is the cost to entry very high, you need to be very aware of like all the rules and understanding like, oh well, people are gonna free for all with all of these bugged abilities and stuff. How could PvP look like to be more engaging for you PvPers? Like, what would you want to see in the game if you could decide anything?
Just to, because I just saw in chat, Ignition wanted me to point out that not only do we have the guides from Valor, but Ignition started in the PvP channel. Somebody was complaining about information and the lack thereof, the gatekeeping. Ignition started a GMS form where we can put in there so we can start to publicize what's going on with the PvP. So we're going to be writing GMS PvP compendium, an intro guide to PvP. So we will be trying to make it easier and more accessible. I know I don't want to go down that road because I know that question might be coming up later. But that'll be like an entry point, another place.
What about the rest of you then? What would you like to see for if you got to create a PvP system for Diablo 4 right now? What would it be?
Oh, damn. So I wrote a document like a couple of weeks at the end of the season 5 PTR. I think I shared it with Bob and Sora. It's like a 3-minute read document.
Mhm.
There is a lot of stuff in there that I would like to see, but I had a talk with Sora about it. He said, man, there is no way they're going to do this. Like, it's better to like try to balance what they have currently and move from there, like implementing like new system and stuff like that, which I tend to agree, but we're talking about Blizzard, right? Multi-billion-dollar company. So I think they have the instruments and the time to do it. So overall, what I would like to see is rewards when it comes to PvP. I still have my ears. I don't know what to do with them. They're in my storage. Nobody knows, right? So a reward system when it comes to PvP. I'm not gonna give like ideas to it. Just I'm gonna throw it there. I have a couple of ideas. Maybe we can go over it later.
Mhm.
Gear, so specialized gear, right? Balance is pretty much crucial. Let's make PvP gear. You try to balance that and only that. It doesn't work in PvE. Everyone is happy, right? You just focus on your PvP gear. And you might even farm it in the PvP map, right? You want to balance out something, you balance the PvP gear, right? It's easy. 1v1 and group arenas. That's a good idea. PvP faction, territorial control might be another one. I played Diablo Immortal, not the pay to win part. I don't like it, but the PvP part in Diablo Immortal, even if it's a mobile phone game, was cracked. It was so enjoyable. I don't know if you guys know the PvP system in Diablo Immortal. I don't know if any of you played it.
I played it a lot on launch.
It's pretty much cracked.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know the battle
Actually
between
tried it.
shadows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's pretty much cracked.
Like,
So you have like two big factions. Everyone starts as shadows, and you win through this like PvP events, PvP instances, right? Towards the final battle. And after that, you tend to control we have like your 2 or 3 weeks of glory, right? Controlling the whole of the maps, basically, right? They had they had some like really interesting systems into it. Like I'm not gonna like going into it, but if you can check the Diablo Immortal PvP systems, it's insane. It's like actually good PvP when it comes to Diablo.
I think
What else?
just to add
We
something to
could
that as
have,
well.
yeah.
Like the one of the things that I remember when I was playing as well that there was this like PvP arena in one of the zones where if you were the last one man standing, there was a chest at the end. And I remember like inter-community like fighting that was going on just for these preparations for those fights and stuff was insane. We had people in the competing clans like ganging up with all the whales to try and like, oh yeah, we need to make sure that we get the chest. And that engagement from PvP is like you're saying, like it's very unique to Diablo Immortal. It's definitely something they could bring here in some capacity. But yeah.
I think you're mixing up Diablo Immortal with the Gurubashi Arena from World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
It's basically
it actually had a chest.
Yeah.
So the champions, right? They had to defend their vaults where we had gold and items. The shadows could basically go in and steal your stuff from chests. So you had to actually make parties to defend your chests, right? The champion chests. At the end, based on the activity of each one, you could choose, like literally choose, the best items from the chests. It took like basically weeks to farm like a good item, a three stat item, for example. It was pretty much impossible to get through PV.
So a good reward
that
system
was-
for what you had to do.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. I had a really good time. The most negative aspect about Diablo Immortal was the pay to win. Like literally, we had players spending up towards $50K, like almost more than a car, basically. It's insane. There's a guy that basically spent almost $500,000. So
That's crazy.
It's insane. Yeah.
Saura, what about
I
you
think,
then? Like in regards to like if you could add a PvP system to the game right now, like could be a arena, could be a reward type, anything. Like if you could add one PvP system right now, what would it be?
Yeah, I guess short answer would be something we can queue for, the arena or something like that. You go to the zone, it's empty. You either have friends to PvP with that you join their lair, or what do you do? I mean, you might go back farming hell tides, or you go back maybe play something else. But something to queue for definitely can help. What Noah was saying earlier, because I reviewed his document, I talked to him about this. Where I was coming from is like more like, even though Blizzard is a huge company, where I'm coming from is like a business decision standpoint, right? Rate of return might not be that profitable for them. Like they might invest all this development hours, and it's hard to, I think, estimate how much the return is gonna be from PvP, because they kind of neglected it. Maybe it was at the start they were able to do it when there was a hype around it. There was a good momentum there they could, I think, capitalize on. But right now, they are still working on PvE. They're still working on PvE mechanics. I accept that at the end of the day, this game is about PvE, and they have to figure out the PvE end game first. Otherwise, that's where their dev hours are going. So that's where their big money is going to come from. It's not going to come from PvP. With that being said, I do think that there's a wasted, really good potential in PvP, because how many ARPGs out there that has a good PvP? We talked about Diablo Immortal, and I know Path of Exile had PvP, but not anymore. I think the second one will
It's
have
horrible.
PvP, but yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Diablo 3, I think, had PvP at the beginning, and then it kind of died because it turned into a one-shot fest because it was not kept in check. That's my biggest worry. Main thing I want before any system or anything like that, I just want like small checks and balances like they did in Season 0 when the game launched. Capping critical, capping wall. They buffed dots at the time, but now the game has changed so much, and the PvP did not get any updates regarding to those balance changes. So if we could get some damage and mitigation like check, like whatever formula they can put in place, doesn't have to be that sophisticated. I think PvP can get into a better place. And then the bugs, if those like crucial bugs that slips into PvP, if they don't happen, I think people will start enjoying more PvP, and then Blizzard can actually look and say, oh wow, actually we have X amount of percent of the players are spending this much time in PvP zone and they're enjoying it, instead of looking like a dead zone and then there's not much going on outside community related things. With that being said, if there's gonna be there, if they're gonna add any PvP system, I would like something that we can queue for, or making the ears or red dust more meaningful. I don't expect them to really incentivize PvP beyond even PvE, just because, like Noah was talking about, farming gear easy with PvP. Adam Jackson talked about this when DM asked him about a question. I was following, and then he talked about curse problems in the game. Like if they make any aspects of PvP more profitable in any way, they're gonna get a lot of heat. They're gonna say, "Well, now have to go into PvP zone and get killed," and it's not gonna be, then we're gonna even push more people away, and there's gonna be friction within the community. So I don't expect much actually. Like I'm kind of like very easy to please that thing with existing PvP. I am aware that this game's balance will not be like, we don't expect playing Diablo 4 PvP. We don't expect it to be so balanced, like a WoW or like esports level balance. I don't think we will ever get there. But if we can filter out some of these like huge damage numbers or like huge tankiness and like find a happy medium a little bit, and then kind of quality check the bugs that goes into PvP, which hence why I want to do more GMS stuff with the PvP branch, kind of eliminate those things if you can find out in PTR. I think PvP can get to a really good, enjoyable state. And once we're there, I think then we can talk about adding more systems and improving the game modes.
Also, a big thing when it comes to PvP is how you actually test it. Like, we don't have a PvP dummy. Most of the stuff, like literally most of the stuff that we have in PvP, like interactions, it's even more broken than PvE. Since you have a large, it's crazy because since you have a large like amount of DR, you can't really test like, okay, let me throw a weak ass weapon, right? You go naked, my friend, okay, my dummy friend, because you need another guy basically to test stuff. It's not easy to test. Most of the interactions are not the same like in PvE. Like even the bugs are not being reproduced in PvP as in PvE. So at
to
least
go off
start
of
with
that, sorry, to go off that, it makes me think of Overwatch. If you go into the training in Overwatch, you have the dummies that you can hit and they'll respawn. You have the dummies that'll sit there and attack your the tank. So just having a dummy that sits there and does a basic firebolt or whatever, so that you can go and test your damage or test your defense against that. Okay, this is going to do 1,000 damage every time. We know what it does. We know how it's going to work. So when we go in there and we like, okay, now I can test and see how much damage I'm taking. And then also, like we were saying, the dummy, to be able to test on a dummy besides Big Dave testing on me, this big dummy. That's we would need something like that, but I don't know how easy that would be to implement. There's somewhere else I was going with this, but I can't remember. But yeah, that as far as target dummies and being attacked, so you can test your damage and how much you're taking your defense as well.
I think one of the problems as well for people that aren't aware of the current limitations of the training dummy area and such, not only will this not translate properly for PvP regardless, because as we will talk about it more later, but you can't control what circumstances the training dummy is in with how it is right now. If we could decide like, yeah, this is going to be a barbarian with this talent, that would help for PvP, because then you could test how damage works against specific passives and stuff. You can test some core functionality. You could test, for example, like how does a training dummy, like how much damage do they take if they have this much absorb? Does the absorb disappear? Like there are specific things you can test, but anything that does require you to know different parameters and testing interactions overall, you're gonna need two people. I don't think Blizzard can add a dummy for that to a large extent. I think we'll go more into like the actual in-depth testing part of it, because that's a large topic, and I think we should probably cover like the just general PvP stuff first, and then we'll move over to that a little bit more. When we talked about the PvP systems that are in place now as well, it's very clear to me that you guys are helping Blizzard in that sense, that you're making these community-driven events instead, events that have essentially balanced patches for the people that are aware of them, so that you can be like, Oh,
kind of.
don't use this and this stuff because then you're not allowed to participate. In that sense, like I'm very curious about like the formats of these tournaments and how they sort of work. Could any of you explain how like a traditional PvP tournament works right now?
So we have the GM rules that we created, and then so you got to follow those rules. Sign up for the tournaments, whatever. The tournaments right now we're doing one of two things. We're either doing one of three things. We're doing group events where I will put up a picture of every fight that I'm going to stream, and you're allowed to fight. There's two groups, A and B. You're allowed to fight everybody in your group except for the two fights that you see on the board that are going to be streamed. So they come in, like this last one was really great. We did group A. We streamed all of their fights. While that was going on, group B was just go at it, fight as many people as you can, and they finished up pretty quickly. And then we'd go and do the same thing. We'd start having group B participants go, but it's just a free, well, not a free for all, but like these are the people you need to duel. Go for it. And then after that, we do the top four into the bracket, the finals bracket, and at that point, it's a single elimination. The other way that we've been looking at was, and this is what Reef did before in FNF, was single elimination or double elimination bracket. That way, it makes it really easy for the streamer. So it makes it really easy for the streamer to, this is the next 10 fights. Everybody can see it. You can be prepared for it. The participants can watch each of the fights that's going on. It made it really easy for tracking that way. And then we're still working on, like I said, we've done three. This last one I think was really great, the way we did it, as opposed to the other ways we've been trying to do it. Like, hey, just go in there, find somebody to watch. Good luck, have fun in your stream. And then that made for a really poor quality for watching and getting engagement from the community. As far as it's like, who am I watching? What's going on? What's the fight? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, some people are fighting each other. So that's how we're doing it. Is round robin or brackets, single or double elimination. Sorry.
Okay. If you were to think about like, because I would understand that in PvE right now, it's very difficult for people to get to like true like super gear. It takes a lot of farming, it takes a lot of dedication to just sit there and do pits and do, I mean, I guess trade site, sniping, whatever kind of thing to get good gear. Are there any thoughts behind potentially reducing the cost of entry for people that are interested in PvP in these tournaments? Because I would assume that that's a relatively big problem as it is right now.
Absolutely. Sorry, yeah, you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally that would be great. Just we talked briefly before, but saying no masterwork gear or no great graphics or things like that, and to kind of eliminate that gear gap. But the problem, it comes back to we are, we are not a growing community just because the PvP side is struggling. And when you start doing community enforced rules, community enforced concepts, some people don't like it. As a small community, then division happens. It's like, well, I'm not going to participate. Then this and that. So, if we could limit, all the things we have to do as a community, like rules or barrier of entry, I think it would help greatly. But I think it's a great idea to even propose in the coming seasons, especially season 5. Going to be a short one, saying, hey, no masterwork gear. The problem is it's going to actually put some classes in disadvantage. Like when I think about it as a Necro, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have less, like more cooldowns, and I'm going to struggle to cast as much, where Barb or other classes might be naturally more tanky. Then going to struggle in that sense to scale even more damage. But I mean, that's okay. I guess at the end of the day, it's it's more accessible to people. But like I said, it's a tough one because you put more rules and the community gets divided. And like Bob said, we had GM rules. Like I was in charge of them. We decided most of them in first 3 weeks. That's another challenge. Like season is 3 months long. How do you test everything? How do you come up with all the possible interactions in player versus player environment to come up with fair rules? Which that's why we need a lot more participation in that. And I have personally reached out to Asia layers, Asian clan layers. Hey, what do you think about that? Come help us test and try to do sort of things. But it is difficult in that sense.
Mhm.
But actually, one thing that I came up long time ago, Lucky Luciano had an interview with Joe Shelley, and Lucky Luciano had brought this idea of when you're in the PvP zone, your gear sort of gets normalized. Not fully normalized, because I think there's a part of this game where the grind has to be meaningful. Like you have to go PvE, earn this like wonderful masterwork gear that you can come and use on other people, and it's more fun. Like maybe it feels good to some player base, but he said when you enter the PvP zone, all your like roles becomes a max role in PvP zone. I think some things like that, that if that the Blizzard could apply, I don't know how difficult it is to code, and they do it in World of Warcraft. PvP gear is totally separated now, or like when
Yeah.
they balance classes, they say when you're flagged for PvP or when the PvP is turned on, this skill gets this much reduced, diminishing returns and things like that. So
Mm.
if that kind of thing applied here, I think that would help greatly.
It's actually a common thing. I'm a sucker for PvP games. Let's say, for example, another Korean heavyweight, right? Black Desert Online. It's
Oh,
known
yeah.
for the PvP mechanics, PvP action. Every skin in the game has a separate damage percentage in PvP. So it's doable in that case, right? If you want to balance. In the case of BDO, they have like what, 24, 25 classes and 2 skill set for each class, apart from Shy. So how did they manage to balance it? Yeah, they managed to balance it in like 2 or 3 years or more, actually. The game has 7 or 8 years already, but every time they put in a new class, they try to balance it week after week. So it's a continuous improvement when it comes to PvP.
That's what it's got to be, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I expect that as well.
And yeah,
That kind of
At
like
least-
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say kind of like Magic the Gathering, right? Like new metas come out, standard shifts, just like new seasons shift. You gotta have the R&D, the forethought as far as what's gonna happen. Obviously, this is PvE and PvP, so it's like much more difficult than just Magic the Gathering. But absolutely, you got to continuously improve and find ways to make it easier. I guess.
Can I ask one question to
Yeah, for
group
sure.
here? Yeah. So we talked about Black Desert, we talked about other PvP games. I'm curious, why you guys or what anyone that enjoys PvP games would choose Diablo 4 versus other games? Because some might say that, well, if you want a PvP, there are tons of PvP games out there. Why Diablo 4?
Oh man, I don't. That's a great question. I hate myself sometimes. I like spreadsheets. I don't know. I think that I didn't come to Diablo 4 for PvP. I know we mentioned this a little bit earlier. PvE was too easy for Bulwark Druids, so had to find something. And I'm super competitive. There's no competition here. There was at one point some sort of leaderboard system that kind of worked. I think Maxroll had something that was cool, but it can't be, to me, a game. The way to retain player attention is a game has to have competition, or there has to be some driving force. Right now, the force is, and I don't want to talk bad about Blizzard, and I don't mean this in a bad way. Their retention is grind. You have to grind. You have to grind. You have to grind. You have to run pits because you need the gear, and then once you get it, you destroy it. You need to get another one. Instead of focusing on that, I wish they'd focus on leaderboards, broken up into like clan, friends, all. That way you can be like, hey, how well are we doing versus each other, just to see where we're at and how am I doing in my clan and how am I doing versus everybody. And then for me, the next competition was PvP. So I just came here, and as soon as I felt like I didn't know anything and that people were gatekeeping, I know we talked about it before. As soon as I felt that people were gatekeeping, I was like, "Oh, nah, not today." And me and Big Dave just went to town testing as much as we could. And I mean, it didn't help Druids much. Back then, we were still losing, but I was able to, even losing, I still had the respect of the community. I remember losing to, I think, Yawa. Yawa's this really awesome, awesome barb. And after he annihilated me, he's like, "Hey man, I appreciate everything you've done for the community for DR, man. That's awesome." I'm like, "Oh shoot, girl, come on, thanks." So I don't know. I think that's what I do it for, is to helping other people out. And I guess that is also why I do the tournaments too.
I think.
I'll keep my answer to last.
All right.
Go.
No, I mean, for me, like, I've been a I guess PvP competitor before, but not in games like this. I played RTS games like StarCraft 2 and tried to be competitive in that. And when I started playing other games like World of Warcraft and PvPing in those games, it was like the whole like controlled aspect of like, yeah, you're setting up like, how can I beat this one comp or some stuff, like the problem solving aspect of it, that was really interesting to me. And I do feel like for those people that are interested in spaghetti coding and like figuring stuff out, I mean, D4 is great for that, right? There's a lot of unsolved mysteries in the D4 PvP community right now that for people like me that are interested in that, you would be happy to play it, right? It just doesn't feel supported enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm gonna be a PvP main from now on, because I simply don't feel like there is enough modes, right? But I did enjoy the Diablo Immortals because it was so integrated. You had a great sense of community with other people that also like doing PvP. So I do think it's possible to have it in D4.
Oh, I hope to God.
But like it would take like a big philosophical shift of not getting into the World of Warcraft problem, where you have people being forced to do a mode that they don't want to do because the reward is too great. We had a problem in, like, for example, Mist of Pandaria with the legendary cloaks, where like people had to do 2 battlegrounds, and that was like the largest outcry I've ever seen, like online, for like a random video game decision, right? So I'm not sure like what what would bring people to do D4 PvP if they're not interested in problem solving, but I mean, yeah, it's not too bad. It's just not supported right now. It's what I feel.
I mean, one thing that could even involve casual players, you basically choose a faction, you contribute to the faction, maybe with kills, gold. Like take, for example, the Amazon game, right? New World. You have the factions, you could contribute to the faction. You don't have to like smash heads. You can just contribute with quests, currency, stuff like that, right?
That kind of sounds like
Diablo
you just
Immortal
want the
didn't
passive.
have that.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like you could want the current PvE systems to just include PvP, kind of.
It should be overcompensating. It should be encapsulating. Even like casual players should get involved in a way that they reap the benefits, right? Like one day you get the gear or you get the courage, you go into PvP, you work towards something. You just don't go in and get killed over and over and you don't do anything basically, right? It's like a loss. It's not even fun, right? But if you contribute to your faction, you contribute with kills, you contribute with currency, maybe contribute to your clan, right? You have clans with renown, let's call it like that. I don't know. They have a certain renown. They get in the rankings. A ranking-based system might be also good to incentivize PvP play. I mean, there is a lot of stuff towards it. Mainly rewards and balancing is the issue, I guess. You can even talk about mechanic at this point. You have games like isometric games, right? You have Battle Riot, you have V-Rising. I don't know if any of you played it before, but there are good PvP isometric games right there. And to answer the question, what drives me to play Diablo 4 PvP? It's a hard question. Mostly that you can test stuff on your own. We have a certain type of freedom towards it, I guess. And it's a beautiful game, in my opinion. It doesn't compare to any other games when it comes to what you actually have in it, right? The lore and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess I think Ava, you had the exact point I wanted to have. Like I played other competitive PvP games, and I eventually got tired of the clear meta. When I start playing Diablo 4 PvP, it felt like early 2000s. There were no guides, there were no clear direction. It felt like I am actually gaming for the first time in ages. Like there, I was like, wow, like this doesn't work. I tried to make a Necro PvP build. This doesn't work. That there's nothing you can find, and um, so it felt really good in that sense. And then that's what I like actually. I personally think balance is overrated. Like it's okay if things are not fully balanced. I think devs know this too. They balance shake up things all the time. So I don't really look for the full balanced PvP experience, but Diablo 4 PvP, because of all the unknowns, it made it where like if you want to believe in something, it's gonna sound as cheesy as possible. If you want to make this work in PvP, any class or any play style, if for a time it felt like you can make it work. There might be interactions here that you can find and you can make it work. And we have seen this over seasons where like meta shifted every 2 weeks. Like it was firewall meta, then a poison rogue meta came, and then Necro was decent for a while. The barbs came, and the meta shifts, build shifts that you can't really find in any other game. So um, it's isometric. Love the Diablo universe. The PV, because there's a PvP, PvE grinds makes it more meaningful for me. Like getting those little upgrades, like min max into a T, and then there you have so many matchups. You have a sort matchup, different classes. You have to build sort of differently. You min max for that. I really could not find a similar fun experience in like this in any other game recent years. There are very clear meta, very clear meta comps you have to play, very clear builds you have to follow in other PvP games, and but in Diablo 4, it was kind of like open realm, like you could go in either direction, and it's a challenge how you not lose that as the time goes on, and while also making some changes to PvP. It's a tough challenge, but I think those are the things that makes Diablo 4 PvP quite unique.
Hmm.
And part of thing, like if the Fields of Hatred was popular and there's like this open world environment to fight, which is like free for all, kind of like Division 2 style, like there's a kind of sort of risk and reward attached to that zone. I hope they do more with that. But there's that experience itself where if you're PvP focused, initially like in season 0, I could go there and like get Hatred Chosen for like 3 hours straight, and the most thrilling experience because like I have put the time and effort into PvP. Now I can fight like 1 versus 10, and that's a feeling you can't really get in other normalized games where well, I put the time and effort. Now I feel like sort of a god in the PvP zone versus other players. I think those kind of things what makes Diablo PvP special, and I think there's potential there. And as I said, I think the balance in the meta is overrated. Where we have an opportunity here, how deep the game can get. Like I said, if they could put some like formulas around, like filters around it, like this is much maximum damage is this, maximum survivability is this, and then just as simple as some few formulas like they did in season 0, and we can have a really open-ended like non-meta, like the meta can form each season, but then it's only 3 seasons, so then it's resets again. So those things really makes it special for me.
I suppose that makes a lot of sense as well. And it kind of like goes into the point that we were trying to make about us involving GMS, which for those unaware stands for Game Mechanic Specialist. We basically go through how the game works at its core. In PvP, that means a lot of spaghetti coding, but essentially what we're trying to do is just making the information publicly available to people. And I do think there is a balance that you have to be aware of when you're doing PvP investigation, because obviously there is a part of the actual competition to know stuff about PvP, but maybe the core functionality of like, well, this is how barriers work, or this is how damage reduction works, or this is how multipliers work. Like that should probably be public knowledge, so that everyone can have more build ingenuity and come up with more and more stuff. You guys, having done a lot of PvP testing, either through just PvPing itself or doing some sort of just hosting the tournaments or anything like that, how do you guys feel like when you're setting out to test something? How does it feel to do testing in PvP right now? Do you feel like it's cumbersome? Do you get frustrated in anything? Like how do you feel like doing PvP testing right now?
It's difficult because you have to
It's
find
hard to even
someone, get
compare.
on,
Yeah.
get on voice. Like you have to be on voice, because you say, hey, take this off, put this on, take the skill point off, screen share, and let me just parse on you for next 45 minutes. Don't do anything, or do something. It feels really difficult, and to me that's part of the fun. So I don't really um, mind doing that, but certain like weird things like spaghetti coding, the things that you don't know, and then it doesn't make sense, and you can't figure out, you can't get to the bottom of it. If there was like some structure around that it made sense, it would make it a lot easier. But yeah, that's pretty much kind of how it goes. Put up a spreadsheet on the left side and find things. And the problem is, as competitive as it can get in PvP, sometimes it can get really hard to find reliable people to test with. That's why like clans are important, the friendships are important, and the PvP, and comes back to new player experience. Like how are they gonna find stuff out if they don't know the people? So if hopefully GMS, we can help with that, provide more structures and guides, but hopefully like some of that thing that doesn't make sense over time, we get more help from Blizzard. At least some like, hey, we did this actually in the code. Like there was a crit cap, there was a wall cap, armor cap
There is
was
no
this
cap.
back in the day. Yeah, there is no cap. Back in the
Armor
day,
caps.
armor cap was this. It was
No,
so.
there was 4 different armor caps. We had to test
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm
verify
saying.
the armor cap for physical, physical direct, physical dot, elemental direct, elemental dot. Like, oh man, me and Dave. Whew.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Mm.
I see Ignition is talking about RNG. Being a druid, I think it
Orange,
changes testing completely. Well, for the most part, for elemental stuff. Back when we were testing, it was easy because Runeworker did 1 damage. If everything is all the same, Runeworker is going to do 1 number. Well, 2 numbers, a crit and a regular damage. And like that made it, testing it was exactly like Sora said, where we had to figure out, okay, well, what's the difference? Okay, now if we just change this one thing, what's the difference in the damage? And I failed with my own hubris, because of my own hubris, thinking, all right, I tested everything. Oh no, don't fix Runeworker. I tested everything. Runeworker, I know how it works. I know how DR works, and this is what it is, guys. Like hands down. And we obviously tested and verified that. Whether it was correct at the time or not, I don't know. We don't know, but we know that now that is not correct. It's not all the same. But
Yeah,
that's a whole
changes
nother
over
story.
time. Changes over
Mhm.
time, and it's hard to have a general consensus since you have different players testing basically the same stuff and basically
Or
ask,
different
okay, but
things.
the guy, yeah, and let's say you test the same skill, right? And you ask, did you had any like dirty DR in it? Are you sure about that? Yeah, I'm sure. Why do you get different results then? Yeah, because you didn't test correctly. What do you mean? So it's a struggle to even like compare notes in PvP testing. It's insane.
Mm.
Yeah, coming
I think
from
that
sorry, go on.
no, I just wanted to, as far as testing goes, you know, how easy or whatever it was, I answered that. But how I felt about it was like, it was like relieving to be able to give that information to the community and be like, hey, like you guys wouldn't believe what's going on. It's unreal. You guys are being dumb. You don't even know. Not that you're being dumb, but you don't know. Like, oh my god, I'm gonna blow your mind with this. And that part was, like I said, with Yawa saying something about it and like getting praise for it. It's like, oh man, I'm about to test for another 4 hours. Let's go. Thank you.
I can imagine the clickbait videos. It's like, you knew nothing about PvP, and it's like
You're
spreadsheets everywhere.
dumb.
Like
You didn't
me,
sign up for this tax reduction.
me coming from the PvE side of testing, it's very like you have a formula that you're working with, and then you just apply this formula and you see how much gain do you get from certain passives, and you just check. It's very binary. It's like, does it work or does it not, kind of thing. And there are some cases, rare cases, like Lurkin, who is also with GMS and a writer for Mobalytics. He started reporting very publicly on Reddit and stuff that, well, these aspects doesn't work like it should based on math, right? And that got enough traction, and
Oh.
eventually it got changed. Now, the problem with PvP testing is that even though we can apply the same fundamentals, such as, I think whenever you're muting, so like people, like the cams are moving around. Oh no.
Oh, my bad.
No, but even though you can apply the PvE fundamentals to PvP and sanity check your data, you still don't know it until you've tested everything. You need to test every parameter for every skill, for every damage instance, and until you've done that, you cannot like make conclusions. You will see like, okay, well, in this test it shows this thing and this only. And only when you've started cataloging everything, you'll start to see like, huh, okay, wait, we can see a pattern here. We can see that this is sort of how it's working. And to Bob's credit, with all the DER stuff, like the testing that him and Dave did, that still holds true to a certain extent. It's just that certain parameters weren't tested, and therefore it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And I suppose that we can go into those findings a little bit now, Bob, if you want to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Let's. I'm just pulling it up on another
Pull
screen.
this up. Right. Like, oh, okay. Let me put this at 10% size so that I can see the whole thing.
All right. Just to give a big overview, what Bob and I did was that we basically went and hit each other for like 6 hours in an evening, and just tracked specific parameters and specific just circumstances in which you would want to know how stuff works. And essentially what we tested was we used Calm Breeze to have a dot with no variance. You could use Andaro's Visage or anything like that as well, right? Like it's the same concept. What we didn't do first is that we didn't actually sanity check the data. So we did it a little bit at the start, but then we just, started doing more and more testing, and we sort of went away from it to save time, and we realized that was bad. We should have continued sanity checking data just to make sure that everything is correct. But essentially, what we noticed is that when you have a barrier up versus damage over time effects, you actually take correct damage to your barrier. So if you have Calm Breeze dot on you, then your barrier is taking the damage that you should be taking, but for some reason players take 75% less damage versus damage over time effects as a baseline. It's not communicated anywhere. It's not in like you don't like no one has just seen that in that sense. It just looks like barriers get depleted faster. But when you sanity check the data by comparing it to the PvE calculations, you will notice that it's a 1-to-1 thing. The barriers take exactly the same damage as something would in PvE. Now in PvP, that makes barriers 4 times less effective. It's like 25% effective than what it should be against damage over time effects. And what did we find about with Rune Worker then, Bob?
Yeah, so with Rune Worker, oh boy, I'm gonna go to page 2 of this little sheet. You can tell me if any of this information is. I tried to summarize it so that we could be like, hey, look, this is what we found.
Yeah, sure.
So we know that obviously the PvP DR is applied. We were able to verify that. We were able to verify that DR works correctly, 100% effective correctly versus barrier and non-barrier. We were able to verify that. We were against barrier, everything works correctly except enemy state multipliers. With that in mind, what we mean by that is if the enemy with electrocution or that glyph, when you hit an enemy with a lightning bolt for 4 seconds afterwards, they will take 20% more damage. The enemy state is if they were hit with a lightning bolt. If X and Y, right? So the damage should have been increased by 20%. It wasn't against the barrier. Everything else against the barrier is correct. It's all working correctly. Now, when you take the barrier off, that's when things get funky. Direct damage with the barrier taken without a barrier, the soft cap is roughly 8.15%. So 8%.
Just to be to
damage.
to explain it, what do you mean with soft cap at 8.5% or 8.15%?
Okay,
What is soft cap?
So what I mean by soft cap is if you have any multipliers, that if all of your multipliers add up to 8.15, it doesn't matter which one, crit damage or critical strike damage, percent damage, dot damage, any of them, any multiplier, if it adds up to 8.15, all of them combined in total, then after 8.15, all of them are heavily diminished. There's a huge diminishing returns after 8.15%. I don't know if we want to go into too much data details. That's for elemental. Yeah. This is for elemental testing only. By the way, guys, we tested lightning damage with Runeworker for the direct damage. We tested elemental dot damage with Calm Breeze. So we still have a lot of physical damage, physical stuff to test, but the elemental side of it, barrier is 100% what it should be doing to barrier, whether it's dot or direct, except for state multipliers.
To also explain just like the multiplier thing like very clearly as well, if you think about how damage is normally calculated, you have weapon damage, skill percent, then you have main stat, the additive multiplier. And the additive multiplier has like close damage in it, all damage, distant damage, physical damage, elemental damage, all of those stats is basically the additive multiplier. And then you have global multipliers such as the crit damage multiplier, like the baseline, the vulnerable multiplier. You have Avian Wrath for extra crit damage to druids, or Gloom, like anything, like basically any multiplier that multiplies your damage in any capacity. When the product of like the additive multiplier and all of those other multipliers are larger than an 8.15% increase, you start getting diminishing returns. So up to 8.15%, you have no diminishing returns. That's exactly what it says on the can. But beyond that, you start having heavy diminishing returns. This is nothing to do with damage reductions. This is a separate thing entirely, where you just do less damage than you should be. So for example, if you're saying like, oh, well, I should get, Frigid Finesse to rank 7 for rogues on my amulet, for example, because big multiplier against frozen enemies. Well, that multiplier might actually only be like 10% instead of 120 because of how these diminishing return works. And another important part, like a distinction here as well, is that the reason why the PvP meta very frequently see dot damage in a lot of the competition versus direct damage is that dot damage is not like it works like it should. The multipliers works like they should. The additive damage works like it should. Basically, if you have 0 additive damage and you add 100% additive damage, you will do 2 times more damage with your dots. But that's not the case for direct damage. It's suffering from this DR. And, well, not DRs and damage reduction, but diminishing returns. Dot damage also, both versus barrier and players, are acting like they should in terms of damage reduction. So if you get hit, if you have 90% damage reduction, it doesn't matter if you have barrier or not, the dot will be reduced by 90%. Meanwhile, in PvE, for direct damage, you will not get full effectiveness of your damage reduction unless you have a barrier up. That is a big distinction. So this is why...
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so this is why like you see most damage over time builds in like overall, because they are just functioning like it should for the most part, while direct damage has separate multipliers affecting your damage to a large extent. This is very likely very old coding that hasn't really been like exposed in the same way, and it's something that we as GMS can then report directly to Blizzard through me, because I'm a Diablo partner, so I have the luxury, I suppose, of writing bug reports that I can then present to Blizzard.
That's a good point, Brian. We did test. Brian brings up a good point. He's saying the dot that sticks to the player versus dot that's on the ground. And we did test Firewall and got the same results, same numbers as expected. Barrier versus no barrier. We didn't test everything with it, but we did test and we verified that barrier, no barrier, dot that sticks to player versus dot that's on the ground, AoE dot. We did verify those are affected by in the same way, the same 75% damage reduction. Shoot, and then another part. So one of the reasons why I didn't feel very bad about not bringing this up before we had a tournament was because we're all using the same stuff. You're all the dot. Most people are playing with dot builds, so that the only thing that would be different would be how many barriers we see, and we don't see many barriers in PvP. So at the moment, we don't see very many barriers. So most people are playing with dots. Most people are not playing with barrier. So the damage is, for the most part, it's all even. Like, not knowing that didn't affect many builds for the time being. So I just want to make sure that I specify that I'm not trying to cheat or do anything like that. I knew that it wasn't going to affect anybody in a noticeable way, not knowing or knowing this information, because all the builds are dot damage. Poison, bleed, fire, poison again.
It's
Poop wave. I don't know what that is.
Poop wave.
Poop wave. Shadow as well. Is it what is it? Desecrated ground? What is that element? Is
that's
like,
Shadow, yeah.
And I do think like it's very important for people to know as well, like, because of this, you will probably never see a not balanced game, but you will never see a inclusive game that allows for builds to just come out of nowhere that involves both direct damage and dot damage. Like, as it stands right now, you are basically double dipping on two really largely impacting systems when you're doing direct damage, compared to dot damage, which is essentially like, I do the damage I should, and people take less damage like they should. You know, like, it's dot damage is very, very predictable. Meanwhile, direct damage is, you need both a barrier to get all the DER, but the barrier also takes all the damage, because this reduction to the additive multiplier and all the other multipliers is removed when you have a barrier. So the barrier takes full direct damage like it should. You also get the DER, so you sort of take more damage and deal more. You take less damage but deal more damage against barriers. It's a very weird system, right?
The enemy's dealing more damage to your barrier, and your DR is working more effectively. So it's kind of balanced depending on X, Y, and Z, how much DR you have versus how much multiplicative damage they have. So it's like, all right, if they have 10% all their multipliers, they're not getting a whole lot. So that difference that they're doing between barrier and no barrier it's insignificant. So the DR that you have, hopefully, you have more than 10, and it makes up for it with the barrier. But if they have 300 or 10,000, or if they have the 5,000 additive damage bonus, then that is gonna change. It's not worth it to have a deer, or to have the barrier, I should say. We did notice also, just to make sure people, to specify this out too, the stat willpower, strength, or whatever, that is not impacted in any way. That is acting properly everywhere. So your willpower stat or your strength or intelligence, that is acting as it should everywhere.
Which
So
also
that's another thing I
means,
wanted to point out.
yeah, which also means if you're trying to make a direct damage build happen, stack the crap out of your like main stat multiplier. Even though it's not normally as effective, it will 100% be more effective than you trying to scale like passives and stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, with this in mind, it's very difficult to test stuff like this. You need a lot of people to test stuff like this. For example, I could potentially kidnap Saura when Saura is doing something else and bonk his necromancer into eternity just to test stuff, but it's very difficult to line up schedules and stuff like that. So if you're willing to help with testing in PvP particularly, please reach out to myself, to Saura, or to Bob. We are creating a PvP branch of GMS to try and catalog as much of these very weird niche mechanics as possible and report any bugs that we find along the way to Blizzard to hopefully have a more easily understood game. Do you guys have any closing thoughts, any questions that you want to bring up, anything like that?
I don't know. Let me think. Let you guys answer. Sorry.
I guess future tournaments. We got, I think, one more tournament left next weekend.
Where can they find the tournament?
Okay, okay, girl, okay. You can find it on discord.gg/valord4. You can find the YouTube. I'm just going to plug everything real quick then. You can find the YouTube, youtube.com/@clanvalor, twitch.tv/clanvalor. So you can, the signups and the rules are all on Discord, discord.gg/valord4. I'm gonna say this like 7,000 times. Just get it out there. That's where you can sign up. You can get the rules. You can message us if you want to donate. You don't have to. By all means, just participate. That's really what we're trying to push. The builds as well are also there. And then asking people that build them, you can see Saura there sometimes. Saura, look at it. He's a pretty handsome guy. You want to come over and see us? Sorry.
Do you guys
I'm done with my spiel.
Do you guys have, like, speaking of the tournaments and everything, you said it was one more tournament. What's planned for season 5 then? Do you have any more like small boy tournaments where you can like be introduced to the world of PvP? Like, do you have any plans?
Yeah, I think we are waiting for the patch notes and see like if we're gonna PvP in Eternal or Season 5. We might be doing the tournaments in Eternal, but also we might maybe bring up the idea of like having less gear grind tournaments, like more entry level tournaments, to see if there's interest for that. And those are the two things I think we're waiting for. And then once we get the patch notes, then we'll see what happens to the rules and maybe create a CC, like reach out to Asian layer clans and get the community together and see where we can go from there. And Ignition, I think, will be leading that hopefully at this time, not me. But yeah, so that's the initial plan, and we'll go from there.
And where can they find you, Saura, if they're interested in finding the most up-to-date Necromancer bonking builds for PvP?
LordxSaura on YouTube, my YouTube channel, and stay pretty active. Try to post once a week. It's not, I'm not a content creator or anything. Just try to, if I find something, I release a guide. So at least for the necromancers, builds get more accessible to do in PvP. And I'll be testing a lot more new builds in season 5. Gonna actually, I tried Bone Spirit with the information you guys had recently. It sucked, even though it was so good in PvE. So like I wanted to try again, but it probably is not going to be good just because it's going to get heavily diminishing
That direct
returns
damage.
after. Yeah. So
Stupid direct
yeah, but
damage.
yeah, YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. I'll have a lot more guides coming up in season 5, and I will collaborate with my clanmates to do more build guides. Like I will do videos and for every other class. That's my plan on season 5 early on. Just Firewall Sorg, Incinerate, Bleed Barb, Rogues. So a lot of people can maybe find my channel and find a build to try out in PvP environment.
In to jump on that with the builds and stuff for helping new players out. I literally just thought of this, so we'll see what happens. Don't take it for anything, but maybe we can look at also it builds or not builds, but fights and break down the fights to say, okay, look, when you're watching from this person's perspective, when the barb shouts, you can see this. When the sork does this, this is what you need to be paying attention to. I know that in my Bob's Burgers and Bulwark in Sanctuary, my little build guide that I had, or the forum, I had it broken down for every build or for every fight. In that was the plan, was to explain, these are the fights, these are things you're looking for. So maybe you can do something like that as well with the videos or whatever. We can take a look at the different. I don't know. We'll talk. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you then, Noah?
I just got really excited. I was like, oh yeah. Okay.
Where can they find
PvP
you,
wise?
Noah, if they wanna communicate with you?
Just hit me on Discord. Or they can go on YouTube, but I don't post anymore. I just answer Discord DMs. Or if you tag me in Discord, I will answer any questions.
That might open the floodgates. We'll see. We might have to put
Already sending them DMs.
Any closing thoughts from anyone?
I would like to thank you, Ewa, for all you have doing for the game itself, and giving a platform for PvP as well. It's easily to be neglected when you're playing PvP in this game. It's like, oh, there a PvP in Diablo 4, and there isn't. It can be fun. It just needs a little help, and thank you for providing that.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you helping the sick dog.
I'll get you guys to the
A
vet. Don't worry
dying
about
dog. Yeah.
it. Can I pet that dog?
My wife used to watch those videos, Vet Ranch or something, where there were sick animals and they nurse them back to health. And it's like, yeah, I feel like that right now. Yep. Okay. I understand.
All right, guys. It has been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
I also want to thank you too, because you're awesome. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It has been a pleasure to have you guys here and to learn more about PvP in general. I'm going to be posting all of the socials to these guys, down in the description if you want to follow them or if you want to find them in for any capacity or any reason. These guys are awesome when it comes to PvP, and it should be. I think people should be more grateful of what their job, like their work within the PvP community. What they're doing takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and PvP wouldn't really be the same without them. So thank you guys for joining me tonight. It was an absolute pleasure to pick your brains a little bit about how PvP works, and hopefully we can get some stuff changed together.
Thank you.
Hopefully. Yes.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
It's nice to be here.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for the stream, and thanks for watching.
Good night, everyone.
Night.